Welcome council members, liaisons, and members of the public to the Council on Access and Fairness meeting. Thank you for joining us. We are using Zoom with the goal to foster a more inclusive environment and effective meeting. If you would like to comment during the meeting, please use the raise hand feature. Please utilize this tool to virtually indicate that you would like to speak in order to help the chair facilitate the discussion. A friendly reminder that this is a video conference. Per Bagley Key requirements, all cameras must be kept on during the duration of the meeting. If you're unable to have your camera on, you must indicate a reason for your non-appearance during the meeting. Please be aware of the surroundings behind you. All council meetings will be recorded and posted to the State Bar's website. Zoom captioning is available. To enable, select Zoom live transcript at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and then select Enable Transcript.
Thank you for sharing those housekeeping reminders, Kim. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the March Council on Access and Fairness meeting. Thank you for joining us. I see we're all getting situated. Crystal, I think I see one more COAF member in the attendee pool. Carlos. So good morning, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. Happy March. Happy some people coming off of spring break, some people going on spring break. St. Patrick's, Ramadan, all of the things. Shouldn't start naming things because then you have to name them all. But thank you all for being here on this Friday with us. Elizabeth, would you please take roll call?
Thank you. Okay. Adebo Mary, absent. Chokshi, absent. De Leon.
Present.
Gray.
Here.
Higgins.
Here.
Rosario.
Here.
View.
Here.
Zakir.
Here.
Davis, absent. Guinness.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. As always, we'd like to begin our meetings with public comment. That is, if there are members of the public who wish to comment about any item that is on the agenda and within the purview of COAF. The amount of time for public comment is 2 minutes. If there's anyone who would like to have public comment, please raise your hands in Zoom using the raised hand feature. And then Ms. Wormsley will keep time and announce when time has elapsed. And again, we are at 2 minutes for public comment. Kim, are there any individuals from the public who would like to make comment at this time?
Yes, there's one person with their hand raised.
Okay, thank you. If you would please permit them to make public comment at this time.
Good morning. My name is Kai On. On October 23rd, 1999 morning, I was searching for my missing father. I drove my car to a scene and a female law enforcement officer showed me my father's wallet. She told me my father's body was removed from the scene and it was hit and run. It was just 2 hours from my father was killed. 26 years ago, only political power or a high rank of government official could control Sacramento law enforcement to make up a fake story of hit and run and a fake defendant, Mr. Junso Fong, killed my father, Woon Kong On. Right now, political power once again stopped Sacramento DA, Mr. Tien Ho, and Attorney General, Mr. Robert Bronter, to investigate DA case number 99F08735 and fake police report from Sacramento PD. Political power even prevent Chief Justice, Judicial Council, State Bar of California, and UC Davis Law School to look into the case. California is lawless. How we can say California is a democratic state? All justice system and law enforcement system in California could not protect the California citizen from social inequality. It destroyed the reputation of California, and California government lost the trust from the California citizen. All members, please help to uphold justice and stop political power to control justice system and law school. Thank you for all your time.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. On. We appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts and reflections with COAF. Is there any other additional public comment? As a reminder to the public, this should be within the nature and the scope of the Council on Access and Fairness. Kimberly, is there any other hand raised?
No.
Thank you. Seeing no other then, at this time, we will move on to the chair's report. Thank you all again for being here and for the start of this year. My report is very short and simple at this point. I'd like to remind all members of COAF, and please remind those in the public that you may know that appointments are open for all state bar sub-entities, which includes COAF, as well as COAF leadership positions. Applications for both of these are due March 30th. If you know someone who you believe would be a welcome addition to COAF, please encourage them to complete the application by March 30th. And to our current COAF members, if you are interested in COAF leadership, which I will pause and say, while not strenuous, is very rewarding. Elizabeth and the State Bar staff do quite a bit to ease the lift that is on us as leadership in COAF. I strongly encourage you to submit a letter of interest, email that in. I'm happy and willing off of this meeting to speak with any member of COAF who is curious about the experience of being either COAF vice chair or chair. And I encourage you all to take that step to be able to work more closely with the State Bar on these important matters of diversity, equity, inclusion, fairness, and access to the legal profession. Other than that, as I believe you'll hear in the director's reports, we anticipate that we will have a strong rest of the year. Elizabeth has some updates to share with us. Thank yous to all of you who have already been so well engaged with your working groups. And please be mindful. I'll remind us again at the end of this meeting that our next meeting in June is in person. And it will be in San Francisco at the San Francisco office. And as you'll hear more in depth through a report later, we do have our diversity summit scheduled for the day before our in-person meeting. And I'm hopeful all of you should have received the save the date invitation, I believe at this point. So I hope that you've been able to look at your calendars to reply to that and that we will be together for both the summit and for our meeting in June. All right. At this time, I'll turn to Elizabeth for the director's oral report.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I also wanted to acknowledge that our liaison from California Law is also present. Rachel, good morning. Okay, so for my report, I wanted to let everybody know that COAF's 2026 work plan was approved by the Board of Trustees at their February meeting. So we are a go for all of the activities that we discussed in December. I also wanted to note that our AI and bias diversity brief was published. That was something that you all looked at in December. And so thank you to Yusuf, Carlos, Judge Michael, who has since turned off, as well as Sylvia, our staff lead on that. It is posted on the COAF page of the website. So hopefully you all are able to share that with your networks and others that might be interested. I also wanted to note that the Civility Toolkit has been published. So working with our colleagues in the Office of Professional Competence, we were able to provide feedback on that. So thank you to Tita and Wenner and Danielle, who is our lead staff on that. That is also posted to the State Bar website, and I hope that it will be useful to you and your colleagues as well. I wanted to also note that the State Bar will be deploying the Attorney Workplace Survey. Previously, this was part of the Attorney Census, and it was administered every 5 years. We are continuing to administer it every 5 years, but it's now separate from the Attorney Census, which is available for attorneys to complete annually. And this survey looks at advancement, retention, compensation, and satisfaction in the profession and will be deployed this spring. So please keep an eye out for it and encourage your networks to complete the survey. Thank you to Shalak for your many insights on some of the questions that we've added for this time. And then the last thing I wanted to note is that we are aware of the public comment period on the proposal related to the American Bar Association's DEI policy for law schools. So I wanted to note that the Committee of Bar Examiners and the State Bar staff are closely monitoring this situation, and we will bring updates back to COAF as appropriate. So that is my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Elizabeth at this time on her report?
When you said that they're closely monitoring it, is there any other information, or what did they say about it? Just curious.
They're aware that this proposal is out for public comment, and they've been talking to the folks at the American Bar Association and other stakeholders, other states where accreditation is an issue for them. And so I don't believe any action is contemplated at this time, but they are monitoring to see if action might be appropriate in the future.
Are they going to make any comment?
I believe only the Board of Trustees would be authorized to make comment. So the Committee of Bar Examiners could recommend to the board to make comment, but I don't believe that is in the plans currently.
Okay.
I do want to remind all of you that there are no constraints on our individual abilities to make comment if we find that that is important and appropriate, and that we have comments to share on the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion being considered by the American Bar Association. Guess I just shared where I stand. But please do recall that if you're making comment, to note that you're making it not on behalf of the State Bar or COAF. As I was reminded by Elizabeth, again, only the Board of Trustees can make comment on behalf of the State Bar, but we can certainly make comment as members of the public who might be very interested and find it essential to share perspectives on why those provisions may or may not be important for law schools to have in consideration. So I do want to share that as well. And then Elizabeth, this might be appropriate that Elizabeth and I have been in conversation as the State Bar is monitoring that, depending on where this goes, it might be appropriate to have someone who is an expert in these things come and speak to COAF at our June meeting regarding the impact on pipeline work that COAF does, other work that COAF or the State Bar may do, if those are removed. My understanding, and Elizabeth can correct me based on what she knows, is that the period is currently open for public comment, and the ABA will be considering the proposal in its entirety at its August meeting. And so no decisions, to my understanding, will be made by the ABA before the August meeting. And so it may be appropriate either in June or September, depending on what happens, to have an expert speak to the potential impact and considerations that COAF may have for their work. But in the interim, while the period for public comment is open, again, just a reminder, we may all feel free to share our perspectives. We just have to note that we're not speaking on behalf of the State Bar if and when we do so. All right. Well, at this time, I should have said during my chair's report that we anticipate this being an effective but efficient meeting. We don't believe that we will be here for the full time book till 3 p.m., but please don't allow that to stop you from engaging in any comment or questions that you may have. We've allocated plenty of time, but we expect this to be an efficient and moving meeting to keep moving. Okay, so at this...
Before we move forward, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to acknowledge that Trustee Buenaventura has joined us.
Oh, thank you. All right, at this time, we are seeking any comments or questions about the December 5th, 2025 open session minutes before any motion for approval. Do any COAF members have comment or questions on those minutes? Okay, seeing none, then I ask for a motion on those minutes. Tristan, you move to,
I move to accept the minutes as currently printed.
thank you. Any second?
A second.
Thank you, Tita. Then Elizabeth, will you do a roll call vote on the approval of the minutes?
Yes. Adebo Mary, absent. Chokshi, absent. De Leon,
Approve.
Gray, Higgins,
Yes.
Rosario,
Yes.
View,
Yes.
Zakir,
Yes.
Davis, absent. Guinness.
Yes.
We have 7 yeses, 0 nos, 3 absent. Motion carries.
Um, Chair, it looks like Yemi is online in the
Oh,
attendee link.
Great. Thank you.
thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you for seeing that, Tristan. Yemi, apologies for not seeing you in
Thanks,
the
every
attendees.
yeah, thanks everyone. Sorry, I don't know what's going on. My Zoom was crashing and I couldn't
Oh, goodness.
see my face, and so
Oh,
I've had a little trouble, but I think I figured out how to update everything. So sorry about that.
no, well, thank you for being with us. Elizabeth, do we need to redo the, okay,
No, we can just move forward. Yes. Thank you.
okay, thank you. All right, well, on to the business scheduled for the meeting today. First, we have an update and discussion on the Provisional Licensure Program, and I see Erica with us. Erica.
Morning, everyone. Happy to be with you to present an update and discussion on the provisional licensure program. Sorry, let me just bring up my notes here. Okay. We've presented on the provisional licensure program, or the PLP, as I'll refer to it, at the past few COAF meetings. But for those who might be less familiar with it, the Supreme Court of California expanded an existing provisional licensure program to people who were affected by challenges that arose in connection with the administration of the February 2025 bar exam. And so starting in September of 25, an application period opened for folks who either failed or withdrew, first-time test takers who failed or withdrew from that exam to participate in this PLP. And so just to give a quick overview of those requirements again, the application period was from September through the end of December and requires a PLP participant to have a supervising lawyer who meets the requirements of having practiced for at least 4 years and practiced in California for the 2 years immediately preceding the period of supervision. The PLLs, the provisionally licensed lawyers, needed to submit their applications along with their application fee, but we had tiered pricing based on the setting or their status. So folks who are volunteering didn't have an application fee. Folks working in legal aid with state bar funded organizations had a 50% reduction, and then other applicants had to pay full price. So the requirements to participate, aside from the application, were obtaining a positive moral character determination and passing the MPRE exam by the end of the year, and then being able to demonstrate that they have secured supervision with a qualified supervising lawyer by May 31st of this year. So there's a little bit of a period from application up until the cutoff of when they would need to demonstrate they've secured supervision, and also completing MCLE new attorney training. So our last updates were sort of in preparation for the PLP. Now that we have the cohort, because the application period closed on December 31st, we have some data, which I think is going to speak to some of the questions that we received at prior meetings. COAF had a lot of questions about how many folks are participating, what sectors they're working in, their compensation. And so I'm going to walk through some of those. So in terms of total eligible individuals to apply for the program, it was 1,005 after the February 25 bar exam. So individuals who had withdrawn or failed the test and it was their first time taking the test were eligible to apply. The July bar exam of 2025 took place in between February and the application period. And so 293 of those individuals chose to take the July exam. 83 of them passed. So that reduced the number of eligible individuals to apply by a small amount. We had 85 eligible applicants seek to participate in the PLP, which yielded an 8% application rate. And of those 85, 81 were approved and 4 were denied. So that left 81 in the cohort. And since that original application stage, 8 have been terminated and 1 has been suspended. We also have information on the demographics of this cohort. And so when you're looking at these bar charts, the numbers that are in parentheses are the total number of individuals who could have applied, and then the percentage that you're seeing is the proportion from that demographic group. So one thing you'll notice under race and ethnicity is that only 4% of Asian eligible applicants applied for the provisional licensure program. In terms of gender identity, men and women, similar application rates. The law school applicant type, so we have ABA accredited law schools, both in California and outside of California. We have California accredited law schools, unaccredited law schools in California, and then we also, of course, have some individuals who are licensed already in other jurisdictions. And so this category breaks that down by law school type or by other experience that would qualify them to take the bar exam. And what we noticed from the applicants when looking at these factors are that nearly 1 in 5 eligible applicants came from a California accredited law school, significantly higher proportion than any of the other law school or work experience types, with the exception of the law office study program. But that percentage is so high because the number eligible to apply from that category was so small. In terms of location, 13% of eligible applicants in California applied. We had the highest application rates from folks who live in California, which probably makes sense to some extent in that they have to secure supervision and employment with attorneys in California or who have practiced in California for the prior 2 years. And then in terms of age, what we noticed was that the 2 oldest age groups had higher application rates than younger applicants. I think a question of interest that came up at a prior meeting was practice sectors and also compensation for participants in the program. And so you'll see we have this broken down by sector, where 3/4 of participants are working with a law firm, a private law firm. And then government and nonprofit have about 10% of the share of PLP participants. And then private business and higher education are much smaller proportion. And then across all sectors, 72% of participants are compensated and about 28% are unpaid. And so this slide breaks down the compensation within our demographic categories that we went over before. And so things that stood out when looking at this breakdown are that older participants are slightly more likely to have unpaid assignments, and individuals working in nonprofits also have the highest share of unpaid positions, but a not much smaller proportion of individuals working for law firms are also going unpaid. So I don't think we know necessarily at this time the reason for that, if folks chose to volunteer, if their employer said they couldn't compensate them, or what the arrangements are. But we do have sort of these initial data points to share with you. And so this is based on data that was collected at the time of application. And my understanding is that our Office of Admissions is planning on continuing to do more surveying during the program and at the end to get a clearer picture both of the cohort over time as well as how some of these factors might have impacted folks' continued participation and their experience while they are participating. And that's something that our working group had wanted to give feedback on was admissions data collection efforts and surveying. And so we'll be in communication with the working group as that evolves. Our colleagues in the Office of Admissions were nice enough to share this information with us so that we could present it to you today. And then one of the other major things that the working group had worked on prior to the start of this program was a resource guide for provisionally licensed lawyers and their supervisors. So we released a resource guide late in 25 in December to participants to covering a variety of topics, professional development, legal writing, working with clients, maintaining mental health and well-being while working in the legal profession, topics that would be of interest to new lawyers, as well as to help guide their supervisors during their participation in the program. And so we'll continue to kind of monitor how the program is going and give you updates as appropriate moving forward. But I hope that a lot of the information in today's presentation, I think, covered a lot of the questions that we received at the December meeting. But if you have other questions or reflections, happy to take those back to admissions and to the working group to think through for a future COAF meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. A lot of good information. Any questions for Erica?
I have one, Tita. Is there any reason for the disparity with Asian participants having the highest paid positions, and seems like everybody else is kind of in that 60 percentile?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we know what that is leading to that disparity. And I think that's the kind of thing that, we can ask our Office of Admissions if they have more information about it, or if we can, in future surveying, if that's something that they would be able to assess.
Yeah, thank you, Erica. I understand if it was more of a bell curve, but it seems like they're completely an outlier from everybody else. Thank you.
Erica, may I ask, how did they define compensation? Was it salary, hourly rate? Is it similar to how it's defined for legal interns, where it's almost any type of compensation? Or
I believe it's any type of compensation. So, yeah.
Stipend all the way
exactly.
up to salaried.
Right.
Okay, exempt or non-exempt, I should say. Okay, well, thank you. I think, later on it might be interesting in the post surveys when people are perhaps even out of the positions to get a little bit, if the Office of Admissions has space in surveys, to get a little bit more clarity on what compensation meant and the impact that might have. Like, are they just being reimbursed for parking? Maybe the question is, did they have to work another role while completing this? That might give some insight for us.
Yes, happy to look into that.
Thank you.
Tristan,
did I see your hand?
Yeah.
I just wanted to share that I'm quite troubled to find that I'm now in the oldest age group. Didn't know when that happened, and it's like, well, it's got to be a higher one. No, so now I would make a motion to move it higher. But anyway, no, this is really great, Erica. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tristan. Time waits for none of us, right? I find myself scrolling more and more when it's time to enter on your phone, your year. So, all right. Well, any other questions for Erica before we let her go? None. Well, thank you, Erica. You've been so patient with us in several meetings. So we really appreciate your time that you've given us. Now, do I see Mikey? Is Michael here?
We're just promoting him.
Oh, excellent. Right. So now we will be having an update and discussion on the DEI Leadership Seal program. And that will be led by Michael.
Great. Good morning. Thank you for having me. Give me 1 second while I get it all set up. Okay, and I'm hoping my screen is showing.
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Great. Well, thank you. Good morning. My name is Michael Chong, and I'm a senior program analyst here with the Office of Access and Inclusion. I am supporting with the DEI leadership program while Danielle is on leave. So I'm just kind of stepping in and making sure that the program continues to move forward. So a quick update. So as we know, the DEI Leadership Seal is a program available to employers with California licensed attorneys. We are in the middle of our 2026 application cycle. We recognize employees who commit to and implement at least 5 of the 10 action items in order to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. The 2026 application cycle opened January 21st, and the applications are due March 27, 2026. Currently, right now, we have 85 employers who are in the program. 62 are seal recipients, broken down by 35 in the gold tier, 11 in the silver tier, and 16 in bronze. We also have 23 who are committed employers. And as of right now, we do have 2 new employers who have submitted applications. And then, once we get them all in, we'll do a review and see where they stand. We do want to note that we have noticed some attrition over the past year due to the climate and whatnot, but we do hope to maintain the number of participants in the next year. So, in an effort to increase participation, we created the DEI Leadership info sheet or handout. First off, we want to thank the working group, Dr. Tita Gray, Cecilia, Tristan, and Yemi for providing feedback on this fact sheet. We do hope that the information sheet will be helpful in just sharing the importance of the DEI SEAL program. Also, we hope that commissioners can use this info sheet to highlight the program and help in the recruitment of new applicants. Also, we are happy to provide any additional FAQs or talking points to COAF members, while you guys are doing that outreach so that you can reference. So that's the handout. I believe it was shared with the COAF members, and hopefully you guys had a chance to take a look at it.
And we can include it in a follow-up email after the meeting.
Great. And that's pretty much the update that I have. Hope that we can have some discussion. I've got a couple questions that maybe we can discuss, or I'll leave it to you. Yes.
Tristan?
Sorry, I was muted. Tristan.
Okay. Thank you so much, Michael, for stepping in. My question is, you said there was some attrition this last year. I was just wondering if you could say more about that. What was the rate? And did we get any response from anyone, or how are we defining that?
Sure. So we did have a few organizations or employers reach out saying that they would no longer be able to participate in the program. I don't have those numbers handy, but I want to say it was like a handful.
It was, I believe last year we had 99, and now we're at 72. Is that what the number is that was on the screen?
85.
85. So we did have a little bit of attrition, and we did try to reach out to some of the employers to learn more about their decision to not participate. And we're not very successful in getting additional information.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Were there any new members that joined?
Currently, right now, we do have 2 new members who have applied for the 2026 session.
Yeah.
And in 2025, I believe we had a couple more who were in the committed status.
Yeah, so we won't know exactly how many until after the application cycle closes. We find that with most of our deadlines, we don't get a lot of applications until the deadline.
Tristan?
Are we looking into a little bit more of that loss, like the 14 firms? Do we have any, or 14 employers? Do we have any idea what sectors they came from? Were, for example, were they national firms that are giving into sort of national pressure? Are they totally California? It would be slightly more disturbing if they were, I think. So if we don't have that, which I totally expect, could we have that information in the future?
Yeah, so I believe they were predominantly firms, and they I don't have the breakdown off the top of my head, but Mikey and I can do that analysis and share that in the future.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, good question. Thank you, Tristan. Any other questions from COAF members? On the
Yeah,
leadership
I mean, I guess I'll give this like bit of insight. I mean, I do think that, one bit of information we got with, without, necessarily like unmasking folks, is that, given the political climate, the focus that the current administration has on depicting these efforts in a way that's negative, that folks, just decided to sort of take a step back to not get swept into the fray. And the decision to, not change the name of the program is, one that the committee thought was important because there's nothing wrong with focusing on, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that it's really, sort of from a position of strength where folks are, highlighting the good things that they're doing that are, keeping folks retained and they understand their workforce, and that's a good thing. So I think between the mix of those things, it's it's just understandable that some folks may have to take a more cautious position than some other organizations, and we will wait it out a bit. So hopefully I haven't said too much, but there's a little bit of a sense that the environment was one where folks had to make decisions that were hard for them to make, but didn't necessarily mean that the internal efforts changed. But from a public, flag waving perspective, they decided to step back a little bit.
Thank you for sharing those insights from the working group, Yemi.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments on this? Okay, well, before I just want to let everyone know, if you were to search your emails, the email sent on March 12th, and it's titled COAF Updates DEI Leadership Seal Handout and Diversity Summit Early Registration. And so you can find the handout attached to that email. Of course, again, as Elizabeth shared, they may resend that handout for us, but I do want to let you know it was an email sent on March 12th. And hopefully you all have that.
And before we move on, Michael and I did want to, ask COAF members if you had any thoughts or strategies that might help us increase our outreach on the program in the next several weeks before the deadline or even beyond, especially given kind of this environment that we are currently sitting in.
Would it be, may I ask, Michael, if you can stop sharing the screen just to make it a little easier to see COAF members who may be about to speak? I don't want to feel like I'm cold calling people in class just because they can't see their faces.
I'm just curious.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Did anything come from connecting in deeper with cable? I know that there was a conference, and I believe that conference is actually in a couple of weeks. I know that there was at least an introduction there, to think about how cable could be helpful with the outreach. I was just wondering if that went anywhere beyond the intro.
No, I don't think so. We didn't have any, I don't think we had any further contact. But we'd be
Okay.
happy to re-engage
Okay,
if
I don't
that's,
mind sort of reviving that
yeah,
chain. And I know next week I'm going down for the General Counsel Invitational. That's a part of the MBA conference. So if there's I'm happy to raise it in the room again. So I'm happy to do that.
great. Thank you.
Oh, also quickly, I actually lead a call at 11 on Fridays, so I will have to jump at 11. But I lead that every week with my with our motion picture group.
Okay. Thank you, Yemi. Thank you for thinking about those areas where you can do that outreach on behalf of COAF. If anyone else can think of anything, even if it's not in this moment, please, I think it's okay to say connect with Elizabeth and Mikey about any opportunities to further the information about the DEI leadership seal. I'm certain that there are mixed emotions around, or strategies maybe around pushing this out on social media. LinkedIn, on one hand, I thought might be a good place to be able to share it, but then on the other, of course, if people are being thoughtful and cautious about how much attention they're calling to various work, I can see, there being thoughts about how big a way to push it. But I do think if that it wouldn't necessarily hurt for either from the state bar or individual members to share this information as an update of something that's available from the state bar. That may draw some different eyes. And of course, then COAF members, we could reshare as we feel personally comfortable as well. Okay. Excellent. Well, next we have Elizabeth giving an update on the Diversity Summit. I'll point everyone again to that March 12th email as well while Elizabeth pulls up her screen.
Thank you. So just very quickly, um, as Shalak mentioned, we sent out our save the date for the Diversity Summit, which is scheduled for June 25th in our San Francisco office. This is the first time we've returned to San Francisco since the pandemic. And so we're really excited to be able to host it there and hopefully include additional stakeholders who have not been able to travel to Los Angeles. As I've mentioned before, a topic that has been kind of floated about with COAF and the Diversity Summit Working Group is neurodiversity. So we will be focusing this summit on neurodiversity and neuroinclusion. We're very excited that our facilitators will include an attorney as well as someone who identifies as neurodiverse. So we hope to have an educational moment, some presentation, but also opportunities for breakouts and engagement with one another and networking. So I really encourage everybody, as Shalak did earlier, to please come to this in person and also stay the next day for our COAF meeting, which will also be in person in the San Francisco office. Following the meeting, we will be sending out an email with various resources that we've shared today, but also with our volunteer travel policy so that you can get all squared away with your travel plans to come to San Francisco. So I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Kristen?
Thank you. I'm excited to come to this. Uh-oh, I lost my screen. Is everybody still there?
Yes, I just
Okay.
stopped sharing screen so that I could see
okay,
you.
okay. Thank you. I'm excited to come and excited about the topic as well, and really appreciate everybody's work on this. I have a question about the pre-registration link that was in the email that
Yes.
Shalak mentioned. Was that sent to everybody?
So the registration email where we have early registration right now for COAF members and our Diversity Seal recipients. So we will open registration in a few weeks to our broader stakeholder group.
Okay, so just some feedback. I would love to see a change to that, and
Sure.
perhaps even an email going out to everybody who received it, because it says preferred pronouns. And the teaching around this is really that pronouns aren't preferred, they are or they are not.
Oh,
And
sure.
so when we say preferred pronouns, it implies there was a correct pronoun and that
Mhm.
now you want something different. And so it should just say pronouns.
Okay.
If it was just
Thank-
internal, I wouldn't say anything, but if it's going to go out to, especially to the
Yes.
recipients, because I want them to be getting that, correct education as well. So
Yes.
thank you.
No, thank you so much, Tristan. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth.
Yeah, and from an attendance perspective, this always happens over my birthday, and I actually won't be here, so that's why you all never see me. I'm usually traveling on my birthday, and I will be doing that this year as well.
Well, happy early birthday, Yami.
Thank you.
You'll blow out a candle or have a cupcake or something in your honor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Elizabeth on the Diversity Summit? I'm personally very excited around this topic around neurodiversity. I think it's one that's often overlooked in the legal profession, in society in general, but particularly the legal profession. I now have some personal connection, and so I'm very excited to get both education and conversation going on that. So thank you, Elizabeth, and State Bar staff, Danielle on leave, for all your hard work on that. Oh, Rachel, sorry, I didn't see your hand raised.
I just raised it. Thank you for having me here. I was wondering, is the Diversity Summit something that like Cal Law would be able to register for and attend?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. When we open up the registration, you will definitely be receiving
Okay.
invitations.
Okay, great. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Yeah.
We're interested in that. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. All right, well now, and if we all can lock in a little bit, we have a very important conversation. Our next two presentations, three, are really more in-depth conversations. And so first we have Sylvia Nam, who will be leading us in an update and discussion on the recruitment and retention diversity brief. And my understanding is that Sylvia wants us to be able to give some good feedback on the direction that this is going. So thank you, Sylvia, so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for teeing that up for me too. Let me share my screen. Nope. One sec. So, hi everyone. I'm Sylvia Nam. I'm a lead program analyst in the Office of Access and Inclusion. As Shalak mentioned, I'll be providing an update on a draft diversity brief that examines broader trends in recruitment, retention, and advancement across both the private and public interest sectors of the legal profession. I'll be asking for your feedback on areas where additional research or sources may be needed, particularly for sections of the brief that are still under development. So to recap, the goal of the brief is to better understand how different parts of the legal profession, legal aid, private law, and solo or small firms approach the question of recruitment and retention. This work aligns with the 2026 Work Plan for COAF, which includes identifying and providing input on recruitment and retention initiatives across the sector. When I presented an early draft to COAF in December, COAF members asked that I expand the analysis to include solo and small firms, specifically looking at what research and resources exist and whether there are best practices or emerging models in that space. And so I'm going to just provide an overview that was shared out earlier just to refresh everybody's memory. So one section of the draft brief looks at recruitment and retention in legal aid. What that research shows and what we know from our grantees is that burnout and attrition are quite high. Legal aid organizations face persistent workforce shortages, particularly in frontline service roles, and this is a trend that is seen across the nonprofit sector, driven by also shared structural factors, including chronic underfunding, compensation constraints, as you can see in this graph. These pressures create a particular cycle of vacancies, burnout, and reduced capacity to meet critical legal needs. Turnover in the legal aid sector is particularly notable. According to one study, over 50% of attorneys leave within their first 2 years of that organization, which means that hiring on the part of organizations is simply replacing staff rather than expanding services, with clear implications for capacity as well as client continuity. So in our last meeting, in our last conversation, we also talked about public interest drift, or the pattern where students enter law school with an interest in public service and justice-aligned work, but move away from it over time, particularly by the time they leave law school. The State Bar also has done prior work in this area, so there may be an opportunity to either update or integrate that research into this brief. The for-profit focus of the brief is primarily on big law, which is also where the most robust and visible research exists. So what that research shows is that there's a major shift in how recruitment operates, particularly over the past 5 years. So there are 2 key changes that stand out, which I shared with COAF earlier. First is that the timelines for recruitment have become much more compressed, with hiring happening earlier and faster, including in the first year of law school for students. Second, oversight and potentially control over recruitment has shifted from law schools to employers. This shift was echoed in my interviews with career service directors at schools including Pepperdine, UCLA, and UC Berkeley, as well as executive director of NALP, the National Association for Law Placement. And NALP describes this transition or the shift as a move away from the analog to the digital era of recruitment, facilitated by factors such as the COVID pandemic and virtual Zoom interviews. So what this means in practice is that the patterns that I've described have become even more pronounced beyond the data that you see here. In its most recent analysis of the recruiting cycle, NALP reports that 80% of offers are now done through employer-sponsored processes and 20% through law school processes like the OCI. Moreover, NALP has moved away from the 3 categories that you see here: OCI, the on-campus interview, EIP, which is early interview programs, and the non-OCI offers. And they've now streamlined those categories, I think, for their own data collection purposes between either law school sponsored recruitment or employer-sponsored recruitment. This is the section of the brief that I would appreciate input and conversation around. So as we know, private law is not big law, and big law is not all of private law. So a third section or area that I looked at is solo practitioners in small firms, again, in line with COAF's interest in either developing tools or resources to support this important segment of the profession. However, unlike big law and legal aid, there is no comparable body of research or guidance on recruitment and retention for solo and small firm practice. The existing literature is quite fragmented and, if anything, focuses on the UK. And the available literature, again, it doesn't necessarily speak generally. In addition, there's very few practical resources focused on workforce issues facing solo and small firms. And just to give you a sense of the kind of information gathering I did, I looked at all of the bar associations, the big bar associations in California. I looked at the New York State Bar Association. I looked at the Chicago Bar Association. And I would say that of those bar associations, the Bar Association of San Francisco in particular offers strong programming and includes an annual conference that they hold. They just held it yesterday. But they focus mostly on practice management and compliance rather than hiring or workforce development. There's also internal State Bar survey, which helps to fill some of the gaps in the picture. That survey data shows that solo practitioners often operate without staff, and that hiring and retention rank relatively low, if not at the bottom of concerns for solo practitioners. However, in contrast, hiring and retention is among the top challenges for small firms. So taken together, this data suggests not just necessarily kind of a fragmented research or a lack of research, but a broader gap when it comes to attention in this segment of the profession. Before I ask for your feedback, I also wanted to share with you this graph. And this is from the State Bar's 2022 Diversity Report Card, just to share out the racial, ethnic, and gender composition of employment settings according to that data source. And so what you will notice are a few things, but also happy to get your input or reactions to this graph as well, is that the nonprofit sectors employ the greatest number of attorneys of color, specifically women of color. But there is a sizable representation of attorneys of color in the corporate sector. And solo practitioners and law firms, and I believe that the method is any firm with more than 2 employees counts as a law firm. The numbers are relatively low compared to what is seen in the nonprofit sector and potentially the government sector. So I'd like to close with this slide to start the feedback and discussion part. So first, based on what I shared with you in terms of initial outreach, as well as an interview with the chair of the solo and small firm section of the Bar Association of San Francisco, I had an interesting conversation with that chair. There appears to be very few existing resources on recruitment and retention in solo and small firm practice. So I wanted to ask the group, are there additional sources, research organizations that COAF members would recommend exploring or would like to see? Second, given this gap, would it be potentially more helpful to focus on broader structural challenges such as administrative burden, access to capital, or mentorship pipelines, which were identified by small firms and solo practitioners as barriers and challenges, rather than recruitment practices alone, which either could be potentially beneficial because it would expand the scope of what is focused on the brief, but also the trade-off would be that it would be slightly out of sync with the recruitment and retention foci of the legal aid and the big law sections, and wanted to pose those 2 questions to you all. I can also stop sharing my screen so people can see everybody's faces.
Thank you, Sylvia, and thank you for sharing those questions. COAF members, comments, thoughts? Winner, I don't know if you unmuted to speak or if you've been unmuted and I just didn't realize, but I don't want to overlook you if you have a comment. No, you muted. So, all right. Okay, great. Tita, yes.
So I wanted to ask Sylvia if because I'm not an attorney, but I have a doctorate degree, and you almost always have to do some form of, or at least strive to do some form of research, whether it's peer reviewed or not. But is the requirement, or what is seeking more of, is peer review research under this, or just any form of research and sources on this topic?
I'm open. So I, like you, am not an attorney, but I do have a PhD. So I did look at the research out there, and it's quite fragmented. And I mentioned that the existing research actually focuses on solo practitioners in the UK.
Right.
So there's that. And then, like I mentioned, resources or any other materials that you find that might be worth exploring, I would appreciate hearing so that I could also pursue.
Yeah, I wonder if people know that it's even an issue, and that's partly my ignorance as well. But I'm just wondering if people even know it's an issue that needs to be shared, and if it's specifically is targeting, or not targeting, but more prevalent in a particular demographic, like let's say amongst women of color, would that be something that organizations such as like NAACP or other types of organizations like that would want to know about, thinking that this is something that would be important, as well as maybe even problematic, to show that there's that there's this disparity. So that's just all. Just kind of wondering. I didn't know either, so just kind of knowing this even more so makes me wonder, do people even realize it's that there's an issue there?
Yes, so that echoes the interview that I did with the chair of the solo and small firm section of the Bar Association of San Francisco. And I said, can you speak to recruitment and retention challenges? And he said, that is not even a question that has ever crossed my mind. It's more like, how do you set up a business? What is the most viable business structure? How do small firms and attorneys afford things like LexisNexis, malpractice insurance? The language amongst solos is how to hang your own shingle, basically being a small business owner. So maybe the other question is, are there general questions that face solos and small practitioners, like access to capital, whether they're eligible for small business administration loans, things like that, mentorship. And the other thing that was shared, and I think that I've seen echoed, is that law school doesn't cover this question. You don't go to law school to learn how to become a business, to own your own business as a sole proprietor. And so some of that friction between kind of like the pedagogy of law and then the practice, the nuts and bolts shingle, to use that metaphor again, of practice.
Really helpful. Thank you, Sylvia.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvia. Cecilia, you looked like you might have been about to jump in. I just don't want to cut you off if you were. No, okay. You are getting a taste for how I run my classes. So I did want to, oh, Tristan, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, to Dr. Gray's point, I think that I am interested in, is it a problem, right? If what we're trying to do is figure out that, I mean, I'm not sure I understand exactly what we're solving for. If you're a solo practitioner, doesn't the answer in the name, you're not trying to hire anybody, right? So what is it that we're trying to figure out for them?
Yes, but it was identified as a concern among small firms. So maybe the focus, but I think a lot of sections smush solos with small firms. And so maybe it's a structural issue too, to your point, Tristan, about how to both ask the question that fits, and if some of what is muddling what I'm trying to find on behalf of COAF is that I keep looking this way, but it's somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, if we're not hearing, thank you. If we're not hearing from solo practitioners that this is an issue for them, and it sounds like from that chair section that was the case, then it seems to me that they should be removed from the analysis, right? And we should focus on maybe how, I guess the idea is, how do we support small firms in hiring, right? Is that what we're trying to, so we can get more attorneys employed? So I'm sorry, Dr. Nam.
No,
yeah?
no. Good.
Okay, so I think that, by the way, I think you and Dr. Gray should put Dr. PhDs, no laughing matter. It's very impressive. So I'm just trying to figure out what it is that we are trying to do with the information. And if we're trying to help more opportunities for attorneys to get hired, then it seems like we should focus on the small firms. You know?
Yes, I do think that maybe there is a case. So the survey data that I referenced also asked for perceptions of the state bar and how the state bar could or could not support them better. So what sort of resources they find the most accessible, and they include MCLE, but also there's a perception amongst solo and small firms that the state bar unfairly targets them for discipline. And also they'd love to know where their fees are going to, because they don't see the resources necessarily geared towards them. So I believe this is not an answer to the question, but there is some sort of perception, whether or not that's just perception or substantive, that the state bar doesn't provide services or support for what seems to be an important segment of the legal profession in a way that's meaningful. However, if it's solos or solos, but for small firms, is there kind of something, is there a there to then say, we see you, we hear you, we understand that is challenging. What might that be if there's so much space taken up by OCI and big law and white shoe law firms? And then legal aid, even though the salaries are not there, there is, I think, a lot of solidarities in terms of like membership organizations like LAC, the grantees that we support. And so I think small firms get crowded out. And I think maybe the question is like, how can we bring them back in? And maybe it's not recruitment and retention, maybe it's something else.
Yeah, I really like that focus because I'm sure you have the number, but don't we think that most attorneys in the state are actually working as solos or in small firms? And they also, and legal aid, right? They also need more support probably because law firms have internal resources for all of these things, right? They have their own, big HR departments and they have, recruitment specialists, whereas the small firms don't have that. And it might be a niche that we could fill as a service. So, and I'll be quiet now because I'm sure other people want to comment.
Well,
Thank
yeah,
you.
if I can. Oh, sorry, Elizabeth. Go
I
ahead.
was just gonna piggyback off of what Tristan is saying. The point you just made, that like those in the solos and then also small firm attorneys don't necessarily have the resources that the large firms do. And I think one thing that COAF is starting to do with like the publishing of diversity briefs and looking into research and hopefully publishing additional briefs throughout this year and beyond, is to provide the information that may not easily be available in a kind of a digestible, easy way, because there aren't the resources there. And I think really looking at challenges that small firms may face, and Sylvia, outlined a lot of them, right? Are there things that might impact small firm attorneys that would that would drive them out of the profession? Because we do know that a lot of attorneys leave the profession mid-career, and a lot of those attorneys are attorneys of color and women. So I think right now what we're doing is exploratory to figure out like what is there, and then what can COAF do to provide support.
I have several thoughts, surprising no one, and I'll try to keep them relatively concise. The first is that yes, from the law school perspective, there is very much a difference between the solo and small firm. I think that some schools are starting to create programming. For some, it's as formal as a class. For others, it's more of a ad hoc extracurricular programming to give information for graduates who may want to start their own law firms and go solo, whether it's immediately upon graduation or within a couple of years of graduation. And so, Sylvia, if that becomes a sort of separate, right, that's essentially the hiring and retention for solos is how do I hang out my shingle? How do I keep my firm going? You might reach out to, in particular, I'm thinking of those, at least on the ABA accredited side, although I suspect that our Cal Law accredited schools will probably have better resources because my understanding is the majority of those from Cal Law, the California State Bar accredited schools. Sorry, my Cal Law colleague here, I didn't mean to put it on you. Our California State Bar accredited schools. My understanding is that more of those graduates end up being solo or going into small firms. So that might be an untapped place for wondering what type of resources they provide. My understanding as well from ABA data is that more graduates from, and my colleagues hopefully will forgive me if I mischaracterize their schools, but certainly I know definitively Pepperdine, understanding is Southwestern and Loyola have graduates who more often than UCLA or USC go into mid-size or small firms. And so I guess my suggestion is that it might be helpful in going back to those schools to ask specifically about how they've seen hiring for those smaller firms. What are the practices? Do they see, for example, that students may do an externship during their third year and then get an offer to stay on because from having practiced only in small firms, my knowledge is that when I was in a small firm and hiring, we weren't thinking, oh, 2 years from now, we're going to need an attorney. So let's hire a law student today and know that we're going to have work for them 2 years from now, which is more the practice in a large firm, right? We were like, oh, we need an attorney or we can take on an extern this semester. They're pretty good. Our work has picked up. Can I afford to not have them for 2 months while they study for the bar? Yes, I think so. Let me make them an offer to come back in August. That was how that cycle of hiring worked, at least for my firm. Others may have thoughts if they have been at smaller mid-sized firms. So I think going back to the law school specifically with those questions might be more helpful than going with the broader hiring and retention, because the broader focus is more on large firm. But if you go back, how have you seen your graduates getting jobs in small firms? I think you'll see a little bit more there. My second thought is that my experience has been that more of the specialty, I call them specialty bars, but practice area bars, so particularly CALA, the Consumer Attorneys Association, um, is very small firm focused. When I've seen them come and speak to law students, a lot of their talk is around how they do that work as either solo or firms of up to 5 people. And so I think maybe finding those more practice area bars might be helpful in hearing from them about what resources they use to support each other, both in hiring, retention, but also creating mentorship opportunities. And that might help to determine, as Tristan was saying, what the there is that the state bar might be able to provide support for. My final was that administrative burden. It might also be worth having the conversation. This, Elizabeth will correct me if this is slightly outside the scope. My understanding is that there have been many solos where they may have a paralegal or a legal assistant who's exceptionally well trained, who does a lot of that admin work that maybe a in a bigger firm, not even a large firm, right, but a mid-size, that a junior associate would be doing. And so again, I think we might be creative in exploring what it looks like for them to get those needs met, and then finding out what space COAF can do. Final thought, I'm sorry, that just came to me. And I think this is an interesting space, particularly for COAF and thinking about the Leadership SEAL program, is, as I discovered when teaching my class on diversity and inclusion, a lot of the talk around resources and diversity plans and so on are seen at the large firm. And the final assignment for my students was always to create a diversity plan for any organization of their choosing. And I had several who were externing at small firms and told their bosses what they were doing, and they created diversity plans for firms of 3 to 5 people, which necessarily look very different than a diversity plan for a firm that has 500, right? And so I think it would be interesting, maybe in leadership SEAL materials or so on, to be able to be very targeted about what it looks like to provide resources and support for these smaller firms to be able to engage in the type of work that's contemplated when they don't have a formal HR department or so on. Again, my experience is that it tends to be the larger organizations that have the resources to hire the consultants and so on. And the state bar might step into that. And that might even be, to go back to our prior item, it might be letting those smaller firms know that the Diversity Leadership SEAL program is not only for larger firms, that there are, in fact, ways that small firms can meet those requirements, can be engaged, and often do better work about, I shouldn't say better, often do a great deal of work around advancing access to justice in the community and in their own firms. Sorry, that was a bit of a soliloquy, but hopefully something there was helpful for you, Sylvia, or might have inspired thoughts among my other membership.
These are amazing. Thank you so much.
Okay, anyone else? All right, well, then thank you, Sylvia, so much for your time and your work on this. Who's in your working group? Do you have a working group on this?
I do not.
So if anybody's interested, I see Dr. Gray. Yes, you can reach out to Sylvia or me if you're interested in the working group. We typically keep working groups to 2 people.
Mm-hmm. I'm probably in too many, but I'd love to support this work as well, Sylvia. My practice was exclusively small firms, so it's very close to mine. All right.
Thank you so much.
All right. Oh, wonderful. I see Mara promoted. Next, we have a discussion on research related to less frequently considered forms of diversity presented by Mara.
Great, thank you so much. I've shared my screen. Can I just confirm that you are only seeing my slides? Perfect,
Yes.
Thank you so much. Great. So thank you so much for taking the time today, and hello to all members of COAF. I'm going to be discussing another area of less frequently considered forms of diversity, and this falls within goal number 2 for COAF. As a reminder, the 2026 COAF work plan includes identifying, studying, and sharing information with employers and attorneys on less frequently considered forms of diversity. And in 2025, the State Bar staff conducted initial research regarding veterans in the legal profession. And that research included current data on veterans in the legal profession, entry barriers, and retention barriers. So I'm going to be going over some summary of that initial research, and we will be discussing the beginnings of a brief and a proposed strategy that I would really appreciate getting feedback on today. So in terms of representation of veterans in the legal profession, about 5.1% of California attorneys are veterans, compared to 4% across the state are veterans, according to the State Bar's 2025 Diversity Report Card. Veterans are a diverse group, and when we use the term veteran, we refer to varying kinds of military experiences. In terms of the employment patterns, the National Association of Law Placement studied the class of 2018 and found that veterans are 7.5% less likely to hold jobs requiring a law license. Veteran law graduates prefer government positions over private practice. Rough estimates are that veterans represent about 27.4% within government positions, as opposed to non-veterans, which are at 11.9%, over private practice, where veterans are 42.8% versus 54.8% non-veterans. Veterans also tend to only make up about 1.75% of large firm lawyers. I would like to highlight that there is a reporting challenge in capturing that data. So there's a bit of an asterisk on those numbers, but it is a number that is repeatedly low year over year. In addition to that, when in private practice, veterans do favor smaller firms and solo practice. According to NALP, in the 2024 Directory of Legal Employers, veterans are proportionally less likely to work at firms of over 1,000 lawyers, which is interesting because veterans do tend to track with non-veterans proportionally in other smaller, I guess you can argue under 1,000 isn't exactly a small firm, but it is small relative to a firm of over 1,000 attorneys. So we do see an interesting dip once the firm reaches a size of over 1,000. According to the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, student veterans are predominantly older. The average age of student veterans is 24 to 40 years old, with only 15% being the traditional college age, which is anywhere between 18 and 22 years old. And as a consequence of this, nearly half the veterans are encountering barriers that traditionally aged students are not encountering at as high a rate. Student veterans are twice as likely as other students to work off campus while attending school, creating challenges in balancing work, family, and academic responsibilities. Nearly half are also married with children. This connects to the retention barriers and entry barriers, and the idea that if a student veteran is already encountering challenges in balance, it may be difficult to enter law school to begin with. So there is some filtering or entry barriers that veterans are encountering before we even start testing and data collecting within law school and within the legal profession. So I just wanted to highlight that. In terms of entry barriers and gatekeeping mechanisms, there is a general lack of understanding and value of military experience compared to academic grades and test scores. And some of this comes down to, and I don't want to oversimplify it, but a matter of vocabulary and translating certain responsibilities and skill sets into a vocabulary that is more similar with non-veterans that are either applying to law school or once through law school applying to early career positions. There is also a complex financial aid system that veterans need to navigate and the implicit biases of being a veteran. In addition to that, the retention barriers in terms of ageism are experienced on a higher rate. They're more likely to be first generation college students. And as I mentioned, they need to consistently translate military skills into civilian terms. There are additional compounding challenges. Many veterans must navigate both military to civilian transitions as well as disability accommodation needs. So according to the Student Veterans of Americans Census in 2021, 67.9% of student veterans have a VA disability rating. And of those students with a disability rating, 73% reported some to severe impacts on academics, and 67% reported some to severe impacts on employment, which are significantly high statistics when we're thinking about the intersectionalities of identity and challenges that veterans encounter as they are navigating both their early academic careers and then early professional careers. So with all that in mind, I wanted to present a suggested approach to a brief that I would really love to get your feedback on. So the focus would be on the barriers to inclusion and career advancement for veteran attorneys, with attention to the intersection of veteran and disability status. We want to highlight who veterans are, an overview of veteran representation in California's legal profession, and key career trajectory data using primarily NALP and the state bar, although obviously if there are additional resources you think we should look closely at, I welcome the suggestions. What veterans bring, I think, is also an important thing to highlight in terms of transferable skills, unique values veterans offer the legal profession as a way to provide sort of a lens or rough thesaurus translation in terms of some skill sets or terms that are used within the veterans profession and the legal profession, and how those do translate directly, even when different terms are often being employed. Barriers to inclusion. So 4 key barriers in terms of skill translation gaps, implicit bias and stigma, structural pipeline gaps, and intersectional disadvantage for veterans with disability. Structural implications, why proportional representation is only the beginning, and what the data gaps reveal about the deeper barriers that numbers alone cannot capture. So if proportionally veterans are represented similarly, but they're on a daily basis encountering these kind of barriers, how might that be affecting retention? It would be very difficult, not impossible, but very difficult to track turnover rate, but we may be seeing unknowingly veterans entering a profession and leaving a profession so that they are on a spot by spot basis appearing proportionally to the California population, but we do not know how long their careers within the legal profession are because we don't have that data currently. So that's an example of why looking at that more closely might be significant. And then last but not least, a call to action, some practical steps for employers and legal practitioners to employ in order to really lift up veterans within the legal profession. So that is the suggested approach to the brief. And I wanted to open it up with a few questions. We don't have to address each of these directly, but as a way to get the conversation going, I wanted to ask if there are additional barriers or challenges that you've observed or experienced regarding inclusion to veterans in the legal profession, entry barriers, retention barriers, whether or not you've observed any resources or practices that have had a positive impact on inclusion from other industries or the legal profession that could be adopted. And are there additions or changes that you would recommend to the suggested brief approach? So with that, I'd like to open it up for conversation.
Thank you, Mara. That was really informative. Do any COAF members have questions or comments or feedback based on Mara's questions that she raised? Tristan?
Thank you. Thanks very much, Mara. I think I have a foundational question, which I think you hinted at there at the end, but my brain was really stuck on that 5% versus 4.1% of the state's population being veterans. And I thought, that's fantastic. We're doing a great job. And we've got plenty of other minorities that are underrepresented, right? And this is a group that, I'm a diversity, equity, and inclusion professional. That's what I do for a living. And I don't understand why we would need to spend any time on this. Obviously veterans are important. Everybody's important. But if we have limited resources and we're trying to get people who are underrepresented, it's kind of one of our things, right, into the legal profession, it doesn't seem like this is an area we should be spending a lot of energy, certainly with this people with disabilities, and maybe understanding, maybe that's the corner, is to focus on attorneys with disabilities, getting them gainful employment and getting them, working. And then if they're also veterans, they have that intersectionality piece you mentioned that makes it harder for them. But I guess I would need to understand more of why it's an issue. I don't understand where the issue is.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I do think that it is an important question to ask when looking at those statistics. I think it's easy to look at the proportional representation and to think that there is a non-issue. And as we got into the research, what we did find was the issue really lies in the intersectionality. And because there is proportional representation, I think it is a category of, as we said, less considered diversity that gets overlooked because on the surface there is that statistic and there doesn't appear to be a challenge there. So I would point us back to the ongoing retention barriers and the fact that the intersectionality of first generation college attendees, high proportion of disability rating, overall average age, which is higher. We're looking at a group of professionals who may be experiencing the ongoing barriers of many different areas of diversity that need support. And it would be a way for us to focus on this particular group and providing resources while also lifting up those other groups as well. I don't want to say we take on the entire world all at once, but as we got into the research, I do feel that the importance beyond the proportional representation really comes down to intersectional identities and the challenges that people face, not just being veterans, but also being parts of all of these other communities at once. And I think that's something that isn't raised enough as we're talking about veterans in frankly, any profession.
Well, I think my follow-up question to that would be, aren't then the veterans being served by our focus on ageism and disability, right? And first gen, right? We have pretty strong programs on at least some of those things. Anecdotally, I would have thought it was underrepresented. So I was surprised to see that we have an overrepresentation. And, I come from, at least my last big corporate employer had a fantastic program for encouraging veterans to be there. So I'm still not trying to understand why this is a focus that the bar needs to spend time on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And sorry, Elizabeth, you've come on mute.
I was just going to invite I see Wenner's hand is raised, and
Yeah.
just to invite him to participate.
Wenner?
Yes. Hi. I do understand where Mara is coming from. I think within the veterans community, it's a large swath of folks with different diverse backgrounds. But within that group, you have subgroups who are facing different barriers within the legal profession. And I think that should be the focus of the study, is to not only the veterans, but within the subgroup, how do you satisfy and provide them the services that they need um, to be to flourish in the legal profession. And so, to me, how I see it is, not only are you a veteran, but you also have another barrier, whether you're a person of color, or you have a disability, or you're ageism, or you're female. And so it's a you could face multiple barriers as a veteran. And I think that it's important to focus on that group as well. And Mara, if you need assistance, I'm more than happy to assist with your project.
Thank you.
And
Thank
if
you,
I may,
Wenner.
I also just wanted to note that the diversity categories that the State Bar prioritizes includes veterans, and that is based on the government code.
Tita?
I was just going to say that the barriers that veterans face, this is pretty common across the board, not just in going into the law profession, but sometimes just going into the work profession, period. That translation from military to civilian can be quite daunting for many veterans. And that skills, I have seen the skills translation gap happen time and time again outside of uh, the law profession. So just I've seen veterans who have had undergraduate degrees and law and graduate degrees, and because of their resumes not reflecting how to transfer it, it's a very military resume. They don't get promoted or seen in the level that they should. So I do think I know that it exists even out of the law profession. So I can only imagine how much more it might affect them going into law profession.
Thank you. So, Mara, kind of summing up everybody, it sounds like perhaps when you talk about the focus, maybe it's to the career advancement. And so it's not so much a barrier to entry into the profession, acknowledging both your and Tristan's points as to proportional representation, but retention and advancement. So it might be interesting to delve a little bit more into the oh my goodness, Josiah presented it last year. I'm so sorry, Elizabeth. The inactive
Right.
attorneys information. Because you were commenting, that we may not quite know whether or not someone entered, but are they actually active, inactive? That might be a space to, as Tristan said earlier, determine the they're there and to get a sense of that career advancement. I also see, I don't know if you were on for the prior discussion, but one of your slides showed that veterans tended to be in either solo or small firms. And so again, in sort of the intersection with that prior conversation with Sylvia, it may be interesting for you all to have conversations about how those things may overlap. I also have curiosity when I think about the Farkas studies about disciplinary rates and just whether or not, I'm not saying there is or is not anything there, but perhaps even in maintaining those firms. So perhaps it's not entry, but it's, as you have here for your focus, career advancement and engagement, career trajectory, and then determining from there what your calls to action might be around those things. Sorry, I was going on. Wayner, you're muted, friend.
I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to highlight if before we bypass the issue of entry, if we could do more research on that, because I think for veterans, there could be a delay in being hired as part of that entry
Mhm.
barrier. And that speaks to what Dr. Gray was talking about is transferring those skills, those military skills into corporate skills or law firm skills that the firms can see and want to hire those veterans. And so once that veteran is able to show their skills, they may be able to remain in the firm, but getting access and getting that interview and being considered for the position, that's the lag in entry that I'm thinking about.
Well, Mara, do you think you have enough work to do now? You're gonna stop coming to COAF meetings?
No, I very much appreciate the input. And yes, I think there's a lot more to dig into. So thank you very much for your feedback, all of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, well, our final substantive or more in-depth conversation is on another lesser discussed area. And so we'll have a presentation and discussion from Jennifer Zelnick on I always think I'm messing up, rural diversity data and attorney deserts. And as you know, COAF is on access and fairness and not just entry into the profession, but access to justice for the population. And so I think this will be very interesting for us. Jennifer?
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Apologies, I got a new computer yesterday, so it's just taking me a minute to reconfigure everything. All right, is everyone able to see my slides?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, my name is Jennifer Zelnick. I'm a principal program analyst in the Office of Access and Inclusion, and I'm here to talk about rurality and attorney deserts. The research question driving this project is, how do we encourage attorneys to try out, stay in, or return to work in rural areas? To answer this question, this project follows the 2024 Justice Gap Study policy recommendation to study challenges faced by attorneys and legal organizations in rural areas and attorney deserts, with the goal of raising awareness and reducing the impact of attorney deserts. Ultimately, this research will lead to the development of a diversity brief, which will launch an initiative to increase access to legal help in rural California and attorney deserts. Before proceeding, I want to highlight that this project, specifically the definition of rurality and the methodology supporting this definition, intersects with much of our office's major work. Specifically, in the Office of Access and Inclusion, we are the largest funder of civil legal services in the state of California. Our office, through COAF, also works to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in California's legal profession. And our office conducts research, drafts policy, and implements programming to increase access to justice for all Californians. Staff are conducting a literature review to help answer the project's research question. Through this review, 5 major themes have emerged: rurality and attorney deserts methodology, structural barriers to access to justice in rural California, recruitment and retention, community trust and cultural and linguistic responsiveness, and innovative models to increase rural access. Starting with rurality and attorney deserts methodology. The State Bar relies on the California Commission on Access to Justice, or CalATJ's 2019 report on California's rural housing crisis to identify rural areas. In this report, CalATJ defines rural areas based on medical service study areas, or MSSAs, which are groupings of census tracts within counties used by the Office of Statewide Health and Development Planning to identify areas where residents have unmet needs for access to primary physicians. Using MSSAs makes sense because, as many scholars argue, accessing legal help should be as easy and as close to home as going to your primary doctor. The MSSA typology identifies groups of census tracts as urban, rural, or frontier. Rural areas have 50,000 or fewer residents and a population density below 250 people per square mile. And frontier areas are even more sparsely populated with population densities of fewer than 11 people per square mile. Since MSSAs are groups of census tracts rather than counties, many counties are a mixture of urban, rural, and frontier. Additionally, even in most counties with a mixture of urban and rural and frontier areas, attorneys are typically highly concentrated in urban centers. Many low-income Californians live in rural areas within urban counties. And to account for this nuance, the 2019 Cal-ATJ report argues for a county-level typology. And this is broken into 4 parts. Urban counties are those where more than 97% of residents live below the poverty line in urban MSSAs. Urban rural counties are those where between 3, and 15% of individuals below the poverty line live in rural or frontier MSSAs. Rural urban counties are those where 15 to 99% of individuals below the poverty line live in rural or frontier MSSAs. And finally, rural counties are those where all individuals below the poverty line reside in rural or frontier MSSAs. And as a note, the majority of low-income rural Californians reside in mixed rural-urban and urban-rural counties. This typology of urban, urban-rural, rural-urban, and rural allows for more nuanced understandings of county-level demographics. However, it also poses a methodological question. What metrics should we use to determine the poverty line? The IOLTA formula distributes funds on a pro rata basis that is determined by the number of residents at or below 125% of the federal poverty level. And IOLTA is the largest and most foundational grant that all of our state bar grantees receive in addition to Equal Access Fund. However, recognizing that individuals above 125% FPL still cannot afford an attorney, state bar funds may be used to serve individuals at or below 200% FPL. Cal-ATJ's 2019 report relies on older data and calculates the percentage of individuals below the poverty line at 125% FPL. Ahead of this meeting, the Office of Research and Statistics helped update this analysis to categorize counties as urban, urban-rural, rural-urban, and rural, using data from the 2024 American Community Survey about the population at both 125 and 200% FPL. Before staff's analysis can proceed, we are asking COAF or a COAF working group to foreshadow a later slide to help determine what constitutes rurality. This analysis, again, will impact OA&I's work across grant making, DEI, and access. And an important first step for this decision will be deciding whether to calculate the percentage of the population residing in rural areas at or below 125 or 200% FPL. So please keep in mind that ORS's analysis found that the 26 rural counties are the same when using 125 or 200% FPL. However, we also want to note that 5 counties' classifications have changed since 2019. Contra Costa was previously urban-rural and is now urban. Sacramento was previously urban. It would remain urban at 125% FPL, but would change to urban-rural at 200%. San Diego changes from urban to urban-rural. Solano changes from urban-rural to rural-urban. And Santa Cruz changes from urban-rural to rural-urban. This methodology question also entails deciding whether mixed counties, that is rural-urban and urban-rural, should be considered rural for the purposes of our analysis. Again, if only rural counties are included, we have 26 out of 58 counties represented. If rural and rural-urban counties are counted, 48 counties would be included, and this number would rise to 52 or 53 if we were to include urban-rural counties. I want to briefly share a limit case that tests this methodology. San Bernardino is classified as urban-rural with 14.7% of the population at or below 125 and 200% FPL, residing in rural and frontier MSSAs. Riverside is a slightly different example. It is an urban-rural county with between 3.3 and 3.4 of the population at or below the federal poverty level, residing in rural and frontier MSSAs. So while San Bernardino falls just below the rural-urban threshold of 15% or more, Riverside is much closer to being considered an urban county. At the same time, grantees in both of these counties identify the communities that they serve as rural. And these cases really challenge our methodology. So we will be asking for additional help with this. Finally, on this point, rurality and attorney deserts are often deeply intertwined. Attorney deserts are counties where fewer than one active attorney resides for every 1,000 residents. The 2024 California Justice Gap Study found that the continued lack of attorneys in rural areas has resulted in an increase in the number of California counties that are attorney deserts. Currently, 16 counties are classified as attorney deserts. However, a decade prior, this number was only 11. And as you can see from this map, in fact, the majority of counties in California are either attorney deserts or at risk of becoming one. Also from the map, you can see that 75% of California's attorney deserts are concentrated in the Central Valley. Further exacerbating the problem of attorney deserts and lack of representation is the fact that only 24% of attorneys in California serve individual clients. This further limits access to legal help. So now I'll move on to some structural barriers to access to justice in rural California. These barriers include, once again, the dearth of attorneys and legal help, especially in rural areas and attorney deserts, the distance that individuals must travel to access legal help and attend court, and this is further exacerbated by transportation challenges because many rural areas lack robust public transit infrastructure. The digital divide, meaning both limits to technological literacy and access to the internet, are major barriers. Community distrust, cultural disconnect, and language barriers, which are multiplied for multiply marginalized groups. And research has also found that small, tight-knit communities may experience greater instances of conflicts and heightened concerns about confidentiality and privacy. This is due both to community size and that in smaller communities, provider options are further limited because of individuals' overlapping roles in their communities. For example, you are more likely to attend the same religious congregation as the only family law attorney in your area if you reside in a rural part of the state. So I know recruitment and retention is a top priority for COAF across multiple projects, and it is an important area of research when considering questions of rurality. Some of the major factors that limit recruitment and retention to rural areas are social isolation, lower salaries, and concerns about career opportunities for both the individual or their partner. Financial incentives alone don't suffice to incentivize attorneys to move to rural areas. However, research shows that these incentives can help. Additionally, since many attorneys in rural areas are also solo practitioners or practice in small firms, they often do not benefit from the infrastructure and training that large firms provide. This creates additional barriers, in particular for new attorneys, and also presents an opportunity for local bar associations to provide additional support. The literature makes clear that community trust and cultural and linguistic responsiveness are especially important for effective service delivery in rural areas. The American Bar Foundation's recently published Rural Access to Justice research brief outlines a 4T model to meet people where they are. This means timely services, targeted problem-specific assistance, trusted partners or points of contact to deliver services, and transparency, meaning explaining different options and next steps in ways that clients understand. The 4Ts build community trust through cultural and linguistic responsiveness. And then I wanted to briefly touch on another example. The California Rural Legal Assistance Program is a state bar grantee that models these values through its Language Justice Initiative. Established in 2019, this program reduces barriers and advances inclusive services for rural Californians who speak or sign non-dominant language. And this project really centers immigrants, deaf Californians, and Indigenous peoples. Okay. Finally, I wanted to touch on some innovative models to increase rural access, specifically the successes and limitations of these models. I mentioned before that the digital divide is a problem in achieving access to justice. However, it can expand access to justice in some instances when deployed in responsible ways. Rural practice incubators can help grow the pipeline of lawyers serving rural communities. And these programs often focus on solo or small practices rather than legal aid organizations. In other words, they target portions of the population that do not qualify for legal aid. Community partnership models such as medical legal partnerships, legal kiosks in libraries, and justice buses meet rural residents in places they already frequent and in places where they feel comfortable. Alternative legal services models, such as community justice workers or CJWs, who are trained non-lawyers who provide limited legal services with supervision of a legal aid attorney, have demonstrated great success in other jurisdictions. And with that, I just wanted to note that some legal aid organizations funded by the State Bar authored a proposal for a statewide CJW program. In November, the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission reviewed and passed a resolution supporting the proposed concept for a statewide CJW program and offered detailed suggestions to strengthen the proposal. The proposal authors subsequently submitted a petition to the Supreme Court for rule of court change to implement this program. The State Bar has filed a response, and we are awaiting more details from the Supreme Court. Next steps. As I alluded to earlier, we would like to form a working group to provide project oversight and in particular to help finalize the rurality methodology, not only for this project, but for the Office of Access and Inclusion. Staff will also conduct focus groups with law schools, law students, grantees, and bar associations in order to get a further understanding of California's rural legal services landscape, identify additional barriers to increase access to justice for rural Californians, and discuss potential solutions. Finally, staff will also continue the literature review and incorporate data from other State Bar research, specifically the Inactive Attorney Survey and Workplace Survey. So I can pause now and open it up for discussion, and I will stop sharing so that I can see everyone.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any comments or questions or feedback for Jennifer?
is not related, but I do need to drop for an emergency meeting at 12, half an hour meeting at 12.
Oh, thank you for letting us know, Carlos. I actually anticipate we'll probably be done by about 12:15, 12:20. So once you drop, thank you for your time today. I guess I don't know that you'll need to come back.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jennifer, I had one question about a statistic that you shared. You said that only 24% of attorneys serve individual clients. Were you referring to attorneys in rural areas or attorneys generally in California?
Great question. That is attorneys generally, and it raises an important issue with our methodology question, which is we don't know how many of the attorneys that are counted when we think about attorney deserts are actually serving clients. So that could mean that, in effect, if we're only talking about people law or serving individuals, there could be more attorney deserts in the state. That's a shortcoming with the attorney desert methodology, which is, I believe, from the American Bar Association.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Well, one thing that comes to mind as you consider future outreach is this may be where I'm alluding to her because we're going to have her liaison report shortly. Our colleagues at California Law Pathways, who have many community colleges in those more rural areas, might be helpful in being able to just get connected with particularly educators who might be able to have students or so on that you could speak to about those experiences, graduates who may be able to speak to leaving to go to law school and why they did or did not return to those areas. So that might be one space for future outreach.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments for Jennifer? Okay. Well, then, seeing none, please do remember to reach out to Elizabeth and or Jennifer if you'd like to join this working group. I do want to make a note as we do it before this meeting. I had asked Elizabeth, and my understanding is that we do not have any COAF members currently on COAF from rural areas. And so that might be something that speaks to this. So given that our deadline for application is March 30th, if you have any colleagues that you might know who are from or currently live in those more rural areas, I think this highlights how important their perspective would be at this moment. So please encourage those individuals to apply to COAF or to any other state bar committee or council. I'm sure those perspectives are valuable across the board. All right, thank you, Jennifer, so much. At this point is where we open space to COAF members for additional diversity, equity, inclusion discussions, initiatives, suggestions. If anyone has anything to raise at this point. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. Elizabeth, do we need to raise anything from the work plan that hasn't already been discussed at this meeting?
No, it's usually attached to our agenda for reference.
Okay, excellent. Well, then we will have our, we'll just note that our judicial liaison wasn't able to join us today. And so normally Judge Diaz is with us and very active in our meetings. She wasn't able to join us today. And so we'll just have our liaison report now with Rachel Satanovich from California Law Pathways.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, so as you all know, Cal Law had our annual Pathways to Law Summit this past month. The summit brought together over 200 participants, including over 100 students, 33 educators, and about 61 law practitioners, law school leaders, and partners, community partners. We had representation from 24 community colleges, 5 four-year universities, and 11 accredited law schools. Part of the summit was a law school fair attendance where we had 22 schools and organizations attending. We had really great overall feedback. One student quote was at the post-event survey. Oh my gosh, my screen just went black, sorry. There you go. A summit is very important because it allows us to meet other students who are trying to accomplish the same career goals. It allows us to give hope and motivation to continue pursuing a career in law, no matter what obstacles we face throughout our lives. Another student said, hearing that law school is possible for underprivileged students was important for me. The connections I made at the summit likely weren't possible elsewhere, and for that, I'm grateful. So we've had really great feedback. We were able to award 2 student stipends, each $1,000 each. One student was Amna, who goes to college with Canyons, and then another student, Martin, who attends Santa Monica Community College. So we actually are now going ahead and planning our 2027 summit. We're looking for potential Southern California locations. They're usually hosted at a law school, so we're currently in the process of that. And then in terms of our programming, in the spring, we've held quite a few events already, in addition to the summit. We had a Careers in Law series where we had an attorney panel, a paralegal panel, and a Careers in the Courts panel. We had over 246 students register for those virtual events. We also, on March 13th, we held a day at the court where we had 46 students attend. And this was just a day of them observing courtroom proceedings, hearing directly from judges. And then they also went to UC Law San Francisco to hear a little admissions panel there. So as we continue to grow, we are really just focusing in on sustainability, growing our partnerships, and broader regional engagement. We are exploring mentorship opportunities with legal professionals and alumni, workforce career fair, potentially in the spring or fall. We're hoping to do it first in Los Angeles, given that we want our summit to be in Southern California. And connecting with law schools and affinity bar associations with local community colleges. And Gladys is my coworker. She is out and about meeting with law firms, and as she meets with these firms, if they're interested in the DEI work, we're going to pass them along to your application to get that seal, because that's where Gladys is really targeting, trying to those firms to reach out to the firms that have those DEI seals. And in terms of demographic data, from 2021 to 2024, we have found our data is limited, but we have found, we're trying to collect more, that we have 43 law students that were Cal Law Scholars. And their top enrollment includes UC Davis, Loyola Law School, UC Irvine School of Law, UC Gold School of Law, and more. We had 141 students transferred and enrolled in UC campuses. And then from 2025 to 2026, we did a short demographic data, and this surveyed the students, and 87% of Cal Law students reported that they're first-generation college students. 90% aspire to transfer to four-year institutions, and the majority of these students come from communities with significant financial need. So this really just touches on the importance of our work, and we're really just trying to collect some more of that data. So yeah, that is, we're looking for ways that we can collaborate with you more. I know Gladys isn't interested in any working groups. That I don't know if we're able to get a part of that, but Gladys might be interested in that attorney desert, and we'll definitely be able to connect you guys with our faculty champions at these community colleges and four-year institutions. So I'm happy to pass along any contact information. And then we're definitely interested in that 2026 June Diversity Summit. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rachel. I will say personally, I was not in my COAF capacity, but personally, it was a pleasure to be at the summit last month. And if you all ever get the opportunity to attend any of the summits, it's like a shot of adrenaline for the importance of the work that we're doing, to be able to see a couple hundred students who are just so eager to have an impact on the world through law and justice. So if you're ever able to attend, I encourage you to, if you're in a hopeless state, walk in that room, and it's like the sugar rush, but for justice advocates. So I encourage you to engage as necessary. And thank you, Rachel and Gladys and your whole team, for all the work that you're doing. All right. Well, we have nothing left on our agenda for today. And so thank you all for your attention this morning. Like we said, an efficient but effective meeting, on time, on budget. That's always great. I look forward to seeing you all hopefully in person in June at both the Diversity Summit and the meeting. Those dates are June 25th and 26th. So again, please mark those on your calendar. Look for that email from Elizabeth with these follow-up resources. Please ensure to, I strongly encourage you to consider COAF leadership for next year. I'm looking broadly at my screen, not at anyone in particular. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about that, and to contact Elizabeth with your letter of interest by March 30th. Thank you all so much. Depending on where you are in the state, stay cool. I know Tita at least is in the Southern California, and it's quite warm in Los Angeles right now. So stay cool, please, and enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you,
Yeah.
everybody.
Thank you so
Bye,
much.
everybody.
Bye-bye.